So just when I thought I'd seen everything in the world of guitar, I turned on YouTube the other day and they recommended a video of Pantera playing Whiplash. And I guess they brought Jason Newsted up to play bass, and surprisingly, Dimebag Darrell was singing and Phil Anselmo was on guitar. So I thought this is going to be really interesting. And they sounded really good. The solo was coming up and I'm like, okay, what's going to happen? Is someone else going to come in and start to solo or what? And all of a sudden Phil just started faking his way through a metal solo and he did it masterfully. Step 1, use a lot of overdrive. If you're going to be playing metal and you need to play a lot of fast notes, you want a lot of distortion, a lot of overdrive. Because if the distortion's lacking, it's going to sound really choppy, and that's when you start to sound kind of hacky, even if you're doing a halfway decent job. Next, you want to add delay. This is kind of a cool secret because even the best lead guitar players out there add a little bit of delay to their solos. And what that does is it kind of smoothens things out a little bit, and it makes it sound like, whoa, something just fell. It makes it sound like more notes, and it's a good way to take up more space when you're soloing. Something I was really impressed with was the way Phil was trem picking. He had a really good tremolo going on, and because of that, he was able to get through the solo convincingly. So make sure you at least have like a turbo gear when it comes to tremolo picking, and if you don't, really work towards that, because once that's automatically going, it's kind of like a robot arm starts going by itself, then you're free to be a little more creative with your fretting hand. The fourth thing you should be able to do, the fourth step, is have one pattern or motif that you go to, like your go-to pattern. And I slowed it down to 50% and listened to what Phil was doing most of the time, and I would say 80% of the time he was doing this motif. So that's what it sounded like when it was going really, really slow. When you speed it up and you add tremolo picking, you get this sound. Even though a lot of shredders shy away from the pentatonic boxes, you could tell that Phil knows his pentatonic box, but he uses it very loosely. So if you know your regular minor pentatonic, or even your blues scale, he's combining those along with a couple other notes to at least play in the right area. Chromatic playing sounds really chaotic and crazy and great. And what I like about it is if you add it to everything else Phil's doing, you get a really great sound, especially if you go to the thicker strings. You know how in the pentatonic world, the box shape goes to like the square shape right about here? Well, if you start to just put notes right next to each other, like 1, 2, 3 fingering like this, it can sound great. So I just threw in a bunch of in-betweens, did some chromatic playing, and that's when you just play a half step away. And chromatics can sound really great, especially if you don't really care what you're doing, you just want to go off. Now, if you just went crazy for the whole duration of the solo, it would get a little bit old. If you just heard someone just hacking away with tremolo picking, it does, after a while, get a little straining on the ear. So you have to balance that out by having at least one good bend. And what Phil did was he would go crazy for a while, then he would throw in a really nice bend. And it just tied the parts together really well. Having a whammy bar is really helpful. And right when the music stops for a second before it goes to the next part of the solo, Phil actually goes like this. You see him reach down, grab the whammy bar and do that. And a whammy bar is a great way to tie parts together. So just doing that took up an entire measure, and all it is, it's like a sound effect. And if you know Dimebag's playing, he's like the master of the dive bomb and the whammy bar. Does all sorts of crazy stuff. Now, if you're gonna do crazy chaotic picking, you usually have to be on a fret. But chances are you're going to want to move around, and you're not going to be able to connect them very smoothly unless you start to utilize open strings in your scales. Let's say you want to go from this position right here to open, back, and then up high. You could use open strings to tie the gaps a little bit. So you could go like... That was weird, my string fell off the edge, but it sounded cool, I'm gonna keep it. Even a very novice player has this instinct that they wanna reach over and start tapping stuff. I know when I first started guitar, I really wanted to do some Eddie Van Halen, rest in peace, tapping. And so I would fake it. I would just reach over and start, you know, making noises with my finger by doing some tapping on the fretboard. What Phil does is he takes the pick, it looks like, and he starts to just tap. Little bucket head kind of sound. The 11th step, add slosh picking. Not slash picking, but slosh picking is what I call it. That's where you pick, but you pick where the fretboard is. Kind of a Keith Richards thing. But this is more of a shredding type thing where you reach up and you just start picking where the fretboard is, and it gets kind of sloshy when you play down there. When you play back by the bridge of the guitar, it's a lot tighter, so you get a tight attack. But when you want things to be more sloshy and kind of messy, move it to the fretboard area. The 12th step that Phil used was you really have to sell it. So there's a time when he's doing his pattern way up high, and he crouches over and really acts like he's going to town on it, which totally sells it. If you don't do that, it looks like you're unsure of yourself or you're hoping things go well when you're playing. Sometimes you kind of have to fake that you're really doing it up and people will believe it. Versus going like... Not the same. Okay, so those are the 12 steps. It's like a 12-step program today to fake your way through a metal solo like Phil. Let's put it to action. Let's actually put it to a backing track. I jumped on the drums and I laid down this drum beat, and let's see how it goes. Okay, I'm actually sweating. That was intense and fun, and it kind of brings the spontaneity back to soloing, which I really love. You know, when I play Kirk Hammett licks, I love them as well. He's got some pretty chaotic stuff in the real solo. He goes like That's pretty wild in itself, and at the very end he does this chromatic, chaotic climb. Like that. So he does borrow some of that chaos for the actual solo. I love the Whiplash solo, the real one. But I just really love the fact that Phil had the guts to go through and fake his way through it and actually pull it off pretty well. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully you can utilize some of these techniques when you go to fake a solo someday, and hopefully have as much fun as I just did. All right, we'll see you guys later.